Yeah. So my name's Andrew Reid. I'm the founder of Vision Critical. I founded this company 16 years ago. We were like dinosaurs in the world of technology. But I'm happy to say things have been going pretty well. We're in the business of developing software for managing private online communities for really big brands. So we have software that drives companies like Disney, LinkedIn, a lot of big car companies, DeWalt, Adobe, their communities of 10 to 20,000 and larger customers that continuously work with these communities to give them feedback so they can measure their attitudes and opinions and understand and bring the voice of their customer in to help them make big decisions. We employ a little over 400 people here in Vancouver and a bunch around the world. I'm going to share three tips. And Mona, she shared 3 tips. There's something about sharing 3. Someone was mentioning to me today that it's like there's first, there's second, there's third, and after that it's all fourth, fifth, sixth. So we'll roll with that. The first tip's kind of a scary one. The second one I think is about safety and creating safety, and the third is really all about the importance of culture. And I think there's a lot of people that are entrepreneurs in the room. So if you're an entrepreneur or startup, if you put your hand up just so I can get an idea, is there a few people here? Yeah, that's great. So this is really I think looking in the Wayback Machine for us about things that we've done. So we have a SaaS platform. It's an enterprise platform. And in the early days, we weren't very feature rich. And you go out, and I can remember pitching companies, and we're pitching them on a platform that's $5,000 a month in licensing, and it was about $10,000 a month to set up back then. And when you be in the pitch and they'd ask you if you had certain features, in the back of your mind, you're thinking, how fast can I build that feature and be able to actually implement it by the time we need to set up? And it was really important to do that. It was like white lies, not black lies. It was really important to be able to do that. And a friend of mine that's a quite successful entrepreneur once stood in my office and he drew me this on my whiteboard. He said, "These lines here should never meet if you believe in what your technology does. That what your product actually does and the story you tell," I mean, this is maybe a little bit further ahead than it needs to be, but I got hung up in the early days about wanting to make sure that you kind of shipped something, you looked at it, it felt good, and then you told the story about what it did. And I always felt a bit behind the 8 ball. And that was great advice that I got that I think you really should think about, that if you believe in your team and you believe in the velocity of what you can do, that it's okay to be marketing a story that's slightly ahead of where your product is. As you grow and twist and turn and go through all the bumps in the road, this changes. And so for us, we actually don't do this as much at Vision Critical anymore. We have to make sure that the products we have, we feel really good about before we put them out to products, because we don't want to have any negative effects on our revenue, and churn is so huge for us. But when we were smaller and we were leaner and meaner, this was really important to us. And I'm happy that Kenshi had an emoji, because you got to have emojis, right? So for a few years, I had this thing called the shit list. And the idea was that I encouraged our top leads every Friday to send me a list of things that are wrong, things that could go wrong, and the things that you are worried about but you're not talking about. And I'd look at that list at 5 o'clock and I'd call the people that I thought I needed to talk about that because they had new information for me. And going into the weekend, every weekend, knowing that this list of bad things had been sent out, actually created safety in the organization, safety to talk about the asteroids. You want to embrace that fear and not be afraid to talk about it. And so for us, it worked really well for a long time. And so yeah, I never had a poo emoji on my presentation before. It's kind of exciting. And then the last one is about the importance of culture. And in the early days, when you've got, everyone has beers on Friday or every day, you're all together, you have this sort of semblance of that we're changing the world, and there's this sort of unspoken culture in the air and this feeling of what we're doing is amazing. And it's interesting how quickly you can lose sight of that, and things change. And so this is one that, I didn't invent, but it's used a lot. But this idea of mastery, of sense of purpose and autonomy. And I don't think you can say enough about making sure that early on in your company, or later on if you haven't done it, that you're trying to embrace that. Trying to make sure you're bringing in people that you feel are really skilled individuals and you respect them and treat them that way. I think what Jonathan was saying about passion relates a lot to this, and that you want to make sure that that sense of mastery and the willingness to say, we're going to continue to invest in you because you always want to be hungry, you always want to be learning. The idea of autonomy. It took Pinocchio until he kind of, figured out how to hang out on his own, that he needed to actually become a boy. And I think that's, it's true for all the people that we work with at Vision Critical. You need to have this sense of autonomy, that you have the freedom. There's some guardrails of things you have to do and lessons you have to live by. But if you live inside those guardrails, you need to give people the flexibility to fail and the flexibility to have the autonomy to go and make decisions and chart their own course. And then the hardest one out of these three, because I think those two are somewhat easy to put together, is this idea of sense of purpose. And sense of purpose is that core of like, I am working on something that matters to me, I'm working in a company, and it matters what we're doing. And you really have to have at the core a value system, a mission, and be able to clearly communicate what success means to be able to, I think, drive a real sense of purpose for people. And there's one bonus I'll give you, because those are the quick three I had. And that's that our CMO, Tyler Douglas, runs our sales and marketing organization at our global sales team. And he has this saying he always uses when he ends meetings. He always says, well done, do better. And I think it's a great saying, because it's like, there's some companies that spend all their time, worrying about failure, and there's a lot of companies that spend a lot of time patting themselves in the back. And I invest in some businesses, and I have investees that are both sides. Every time I meet with one guy, he's always telling me how awesome he is and how great things are and how he's going to kill it. And I have another one that's constantly worrying. You want to have that balance, that balance, that idea of like, pat yourself on the back because it's a good job, but everything you can do, when you look back on it, you maybe could have done better, and you want to have that attitude going into the next project. That's all I have, so thanks. Does anyone have questions? We could be tired of questions. Somebody's got to have one. Come on, let's go. There's one back there. We don't call it the shit list anymore. I think we're doing it. We're doing it in probably more of a big company fashion, more than I'd like to see. And I think even just putting this talk together, we really want to get back to that willingness, and even calling it the shit list is a good way to kind of deflate the worry you have about all the bad things that could go on. So officially, no. Yeah, I mean, what it did is it was a Google Doc that we just kept, and we continue to update it. And so what was interesting was to see the things that would drop off that list. Because there's always the pending asteroids you worry about. And some of them you worry about, but they don't actually happen. And then there was things that would stay on there. And as we continue to worry about them, we decide that we need to address them. And it was one of those, if you hadn't, everyone has the things that are going on in their head that they're kind of worrying about, but they're not talking about it. And so what that list allowed us to do was that if we're all worrying about it and we're putting it on that list and it continues to stay on that list, then let's clear that issue. Let's fix that bug. Let's beef up that feature. Let's deal with that security issue. I mean, a lot of the issues you have, especially with enterprise, is there's a lot of, in the early days, it was hard to spend money on security, on compliance, on all the redundancies in case bad things happen. And as we got bigger, that list helped us prioritize when we needed to kind of pay for some of those potential asteroids and make sure that we were secure. Okay, I'll read. Sorry. Another question. Yeah, so for me, what did I really value those risks? Well, you're worrying about a lot of things. You're worrying about your revenue, I mean, when we were smaller, we didn't have a lot of money. You're worrying about trying to continue to have traction. You're worried about having a bunch of shiny features besides plumbing. And so what that list did was it did a nice job of surfacing and providing a little bit of truth serum into the system of what our top leaders were thinking on a continual basis. And so that input helped us make some tough decisions that I don't think I would have made, because you want to run fast. You know you're going to eventually fall, but everyone here who's an entrepreneur, you kind of feel like you're Superman sometimes when things are going well, and you pending disaster always happens, but you never really plan for it. Sorry. I'm rewinding the tape very far from when we were a startup. It's like Kenshi was talking about the nuclear winter of 2008. I started my company in May of 2000. That was the original .com bubble that burst 2 months after I started my company. So.
Now a more difficult question. I've been in the IT industry for like 30 years. How come I never heard of you before?
Charlene. Yeah, no, we're an enterprise play. We mostly sell into, we traditionally sold into the marketing research or the voice of customer department of very large brands. That's where we focused our energy and our attention. So, we're rock stars at conferences around customer experience and voice of customer. We're working on being more well-known in the market research world. We sell B2C, but we sell them, we're an enterprise software play for large corporations. And if we don't really, our target is $1 billion plus companies, so pretty large brands. Two more. Sorry, we're here.
Now, what was the culture at the very beginning, and has it really changed and evolved?
What was the culture at the beginning, and has it really changed and evolved? I don't know. I didn't really know what I was doing when we started. It was just, I was 23, and we were trying to have as much fun as possible and get work done and pay the bills. And that culture had to transform. And the funny thing was, it took us many years to get to the point where we really articulated that culture. And we realized that our culture was the sense of purpose, the mastery, the autonomy, those pieces. And so we were able to sort of write off the enthusiasm and excitement of what we were doing for a long time before we got there. You actually had the question, sorry.
Similar question to the culture. We see a lot of cults coming out of that, but I love how you said articulate. How do you prevent that? You still wanted to have fun, but you didn't want it to become a cult.
Yeah, she's just asking about the cult side. I mean, and everyone's read the stories about HubSpot and about other brands that are going through some challenges or some interesting press around having these really strong cultures, but then they don't necessarily, sometimes they backfire, sometimes they work out well for them. I think you gotta be really, at the end of the day, we're actually not, and it's sad to say this, but first and foremost, we're not just trying to have fun. We're not like little kids trying to have fun. We're trying to make sure that we are doing things that we feel are impactful. We're trying to make sure that we have people that we respect, that are masters of their domains. We're trying to give people the space to be able to do what they do. And we want to make sure we have a vision, a mission, a true north, and a value system that supports that. And we have a culture now that we pay for performance, and we care a lot about our metrics, and we spend a lot of time explaining those. We're trying to have fun and make sure that what we're doing is fun, and we have foosball and beer pong and a beer cart that goes around on Fridays, all those things, but that is super secondary to what our culture is. That's just that's a thing that we do. That's this other vehicle that's an additive. I think that's all the time I have. Thanks.